When you ultimately decide, hey, it's time to go, do not do it in person. Do not do it alone. Do not do it in a private setting. There is decades of case law, case after case after case.
Down below, I agree with this attorney and content creator 1000%. For context, I am 46 years old. I was in a 28-year relationship, 19 years married, and I finally walked out of
my arm. I am telling him to let go of my arm, and it is becoming apparent to me that he is not going to let go of my arm, and he has no plans of letting me out of this car. I'm wearing a jacket, so my first thought is, okay, take off the jacket because then maybe he'll lose the grip.
Hey guys, welcome back to All Things Jenny. I'm Jenny. So you would think that things like this wouldn't be things that we have to talk about and warn people about, because when you're in a relationship, you assume the person that you're with loves you and wouldn't try to hurt you at the end of the relationship. But sometimes that's just not the case.
Ladies, this is the #1 way to not be unalived by your boyfriend or your husband. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and there is this phenomenon in criminal law where I use very gendered terms in this video, so please excuse that. But this is specifically focused on cis men, boyfriends, and significant others. I can talk about sort of queer aggression and defenses for gay panic defenses in a different video. When you are going to leave your partner, when you ultimately decide, hey, it's time to go, do not do it in person. Do not do it alone. Do not do it in a private setting. There is decades of case law, case after case after case, where the woman decides to leave the man, and that moment that the man realizes she is actually leaving, this is not a threat, this is not, just sort of a fight, that she is actually going to go, that is the moment that, I don't know how to say it on TikTok, but that is the moment when the unaliving occurs. So there's just sort of decades of precedent where this situation has happened. There's actually an entire section of case law in my criminal law textbooks in law school going over cases. They're called the heat of passion crimes. You might be thinking like, oh, but he's different, or not him, or but I love him, or we've been married for X number of years. I guarantee you, every woman who is now the subject of case law in a criminal law textbook thought the same exact thing. So please, I know I make goofy, stupid videos on TikTok, but this is probably like, please take this advice. I know breaking up with someone over the phone sucks. I've been the recipient of it. I know that breaking up with someone over text sucks. I know that maybe doing it at a restaurant or in a public place, but if there's any sort of history of aggression or violence in this person's background, or you just sort of have that sinking feeling where you're like, maybe there's like a 1% chance of like an extreme reaction, please just do it. I'd rather you be a jerk who broke up with someone over the phone who is still alive than someone who is the next person in a legal textbook. That sounds really dramatic. That sounds really extreme. But it's your life and you only get one of them. So I want y'all drinking cold brew with an ugly fat dog next to you for a very long time. Oh, and P.S. by the way, those heat of passion crimes that I talked about, definitely look them up, because there's a whole sort of like constellation of like ways in which attorneys utilize them, but they're really effective on juries, and they have been used for a long time. They've got a real ugly history going all the way back to like race-fueled crimes. And so they've been used for a really long time to get people off on at their trials, and also to continue to be used today. Ladies, this is the #1 way to not be unalived by your boyfriend or your husband.
This is one of the biggest lessons that I have had to learn as a woman dating in my adulthood. He goes on to say that when you get to the point where you are about to end the relationship, do it over the phone. And if you have to do it in person, do it in public. Do not do it in private. And after my last dating experience, I will never again end things with a man in person, in private. It is culturally instilled in us from a young age that the right thing to do is to end a relationship face to face. But honestly, that is just not worth risking your life. especially if there's any doubt in your mind that this man has any sort of violent tendencies or is not all the way. In my last relationship, when things were starting to fall apart and we were starting to have conversations around potentially no longer continuing the relationship, I started to realize that he was not reacting to these conversations in the way that typical adults respond. It was obvious to me that he was not all the way happy either, but whenever we would get to the point in an argument where I was like, yeah, I'm actually going to end the relationship, things would escalate to a level that I just could not comprehend. And while it was obvious that this relationship was not going to end in a non-dramatic fashion, it never occurred to me that that could actually be very dangerous for me. The night that I had finally had enough and decided to end it, we had gotten into a fight at dinner. I waited until we got home from dinner to end the relationship. I didn't want to cause a scene in public, and I felt like, well, this is a private conversation. It should take place in a private setting. So as we were having this breakup fight and I tell him that I am done, I can see that it's not registering in his brain that I'm actually being serious until I start packing up my belongings. So I grab all my belongings, I put them in a bag, I put on my backpack, and I go to walk out. And at this point, I can see it click in his eyes that he realizes I am serious and that this relationship is over. The moment this happens, he races to the door, stands in the door frame, and blocks me from leaving the apartment. At the time, I had never experienced anything like this, and I did not realize how serious this was. I thought he was just being dramatic. But as he's refusing to let me leave, my adrenaline is starting to rush and I am getting increasingly panicked. I finally get past him and I think, oh, thank God, I'm out the door, I'm fine, I'm safe. And right when I think that, I get snatched up like this. I had a backpack on and he grabs the handle of the backpack and yanks me back. So safety tip for women, whenever you're wearing a backpack, never wear both straps of the backpack. From that day forward, I always only carry a backpack with one strap. In the event that another man ever tries to grab me, I can drop the backpack off my shoulder and run. So at this point, I am panicking. We are standing in the hallway. He is holding my backpack. The straps are pressed up against my shoulders. I cannot get away. I cannot move. My only thought is start screaming. So I start yelling in the hopes that causing enough commotion will get him to drop the backpack and leave me alone. And it does. But there is another door at the end of the hallway, which he then runs to and blocks as well. At this point, I'm realizing there's two more doors. There's a staircase and there's a parking garage I have to get to and out of in order to get out of here. And I realize it is in my best interest to now de-escalate the situation because I am scared for my safety. And I know that even if I get out of here tonight, like this breakup is not going to end tonight. This is going to continue and this is going to be something that's drawn on and very dramatic that I just don't want to deal with. So I choose to de-escalate the situation, tell him never mind, and I will stay and go back into the apartment with him. So at this point, I just tell him, look, I am past my limit with you. I will give you a pass tonight, but if this happens again, the thing that happened to cause the initial fight, I'm done, I'm gone. So he is acting amazing for the next couple days. If you guys have ever dealt with a master manipulator, I now understand how y'all end up in these relationships. Because for the life of me, prior to him, I could not understand how people got into situations like this. So I stay in the relationship for 4 more days because, again, I didn't understand at the time how serious that behavior was. A large part of me still just thought, oh, he's being dramatic. But sure enough, the original offense that caused that big fight in the first place happens again. But this time, I was like, okay, I'm going to be smart about how I go about this breakup. Instead of being impassioned and acting on my impulses in the moment, I waited for him to leave and go to work. While he was at work, I packed up all of my things, moved my car out of his garage, and moved it onto the street. I knew if I broke up with him over the phone, he was going to show up at my apartment, and that was something that I wanted to avoid. So I felt like it was better to do it in person, in public. I parked my car on a very crowded street, both with pedestrian foot traffic and car traffic. I knew it was going to be rush hour when he got home, so I knew there would be a ton of cars sitting on the road next to us, and I parked right in front of his building security that I knew could watch the whole interaction go down. Sure enough, he gets home from work, parks behind my car on the busy street, but this is where I went wrong because he was taking too long to get out of his car. I got impatient, got out of mine, and got into his. Y'all, don't do that. But I did leave the passenger door open. So I confront him in the car about his behavior, and I let him know I'm done for real, like this relationship is over. I then go to get out of the car, and at this point, he reaches out and grabs my arm. I am telling him to let go of my arm, and it is becoming apparent to me that he is not going to let go of my arm, and he has no plans of letting me out of this car. I'm wearing a jacket, so my first thought is, okay, take off the jacket because then maybe he'll lose the grip on my arm and he'll just be holding the jacket. So as I'm trying to take off my jacket, he realizes what I'm doing. He lets go of my arm. I sprint out of his car, jump into the driver's side seat of my car, but he jumps out of the car as well, and he follows me. When I get into my car, he steps in between the door frame and the door so that I can't close it, and is holding the door open with both arms wide. At this point, I am still talking calm to him. I'm talking to him exactly like I am talking to you guys now, but my adrenaline is starting to spike. As he is pleading for me not to leave, it is becoming apparent to me that he has no plans of moving. Again, y'all, this is rush hour on a busy street. There are people walking by. There are cars not only driving by, but stopped next to us watching what is going on. I tell him, you need to step away from my car or I am going to run you over. He says, run me over. I'm not moving. So I say, okay, and I step on the gas. I'm thinking, like any logical person, he is going to back away from the car when he realizes that I am serious. But no, he is not a logical person. He jumps into the car onto my lap. He grabs the steering wheel with one hand, holds the door open with the other hand, and is kicking my foot out of the way so he can get to the brake. Now I start screaming. I am scared. I am panicking. I do not know what to do to get this grown man off of my lap so that I can get away and go home. Mind you, I deliberately picked this spot because I know that he hates causing scenes in public. And not only was this in public, but it was in front of people that he knows, his building security. But as I'm getting increasingly panicked, I feel like it's in my best interest to cause a scene. So I start screaming. Everyone is staring. People are yelling out their cars. Oh my God, are you okay? He yells back, she's fine. I'm her boyfriend. She's breaking up with me. At this point, this girl who is driving by rolls down her window and starts recording. I tell him, hey, we're being recorded. I really don't want to be on the internet. Please get off of me so I can go home. His response is to scream at her, record us all you want. She threatens to call the cops. I then tell him, if you don't get off my lap, I am also going to call the cops. Cars are flying by. My car door is wide open. I'm thinking like they're going to hit my car door. My car is going to break. I am like jerking my car back and forth, just trying to figure out how to get him off of my lap and make him lose his balance so he will get out of my car. I tell him I'm going to call the cops. He tells me to call the cops. So I call the cops. I call 911. I'm on the phone with the 911 operator. I give her his full name, his description. And the whole time I'm on the phone with 911, me and him are screaming at each other back and forth, and he still will not get out of the car. The operator tells him if he does not get out of the car, she is going to send the police. At this exact moment, a woman on the street sees us and comes over and intervenes. I don't know who this woman was or where she came from, but God himself sent her down because she was twice his size and looked like she lived in the gym, okay? She came up to my car and was like, do we have a problem here? At this point, he gets off of my lap, steps away from me, still is holding the door open. But as this woman is approaching and yelling at him, and as the 911 operator is telling him that she's about to send the police, he steps away just far enough from the car. The woman from the street turns to me and she just says, go. So I slam my door, I hit the gas, and all the cars stop driving to let me out, and I zoom on the freeway and I zoom to my apartment. He then calls me 39 times. I pack up all my belongings and I go stay at home with my parents for a week. I had to order extra security cameras to put around my apartment and extra locks to put on my doors. After this, I had to block his number from all of my phones, all of my social media platforms, including email and LinkedIn, and his work number that he was using the company phone to call me from. I also caught him showing up to events that he knew I was going to be at. And all I can think is, thank God I decided to do this in public. That was so traumatizing, and all I could think was, if this is how he acted in public, I don't even want to imagine what he would have acted like if I would have went through with it in private. And mind you, from the day I met this man to the day I blocked him was no more than 4 months. So if you have been deeply involved with someone, especially if it's been for a long period of time, and there is any doubt in your mind that they are capable of violent tendencies, end it over the phone. End it over the phone. And if you have to end it in person because you feel like you need that, not just because you're trying to be a good person, because being a good person is not worth it, make sure you are in a public, well-lit area that you can easily escape from, because it is simply not worth the risk.
Ladies, this is the #1 way to not be unalived by your boyfriend or your husband. I'm in criminal defense.
Make sure to watch the video. It's down below. I agree with this attorney and content creator 1000%. For context, I am 46 years old. I was in a 28-year relationship, 19 years married, and I finally walked out of that relationship back in May of 2020. I met my ex-husband when I was still a freshman in high school, fairly naive, and there were already red flags then, but I didn't know any better, and I stayed in this relationship with this person. And historically, he's had a history of being aggressive towards other people who he thought was a threat to the relationship, as well as he continued to accused me of infidelity throughout the entire relationship. I learned to pacify, I learned to cope, and there were periods where things were fine and I just never knew when he was going to have one of his episodes. He's also gotten violent with me. And there were plenty of times where I wanted to leave, but I knew this person's character, and quite frankly, I was scared. About 3 years before me actually leaving, I worked with a therapist, and the two of us were seeing this therapist, and she asked for a private session with me and advised me that I needed to see a trauma specialist because she thinks I am in a codependent narcissistic relationship. So if you don't know that, make sure to look it up over the internet, because it's a toxic dynamic that is not very easy for women to leave these types of relationship. Once I gained awareness of what I was going through, I started to see the relationship differently. And then I started to make sure that I was safe, and I, to be honest with you, was already planning to exit, and I was just waiting for the opportunity of when. And while I was in the relationship, I was really hoping that things will turn up and improve and become better, but unfortunately, they didn't. So one day he had an episode, but this time it was an episode in public. We were at work, and he started to accuse me of infidelity once again. And to be honest with you, that was my golden ticket. There were other people there who saw his behaviors. That evening I went home. I packed my stuff. Both of my daughters were there. They helped me. It was, there are certain things that I wish I could have protected my daughters from. And I did my best. And, you know, unfortunately, this is how things turned up. But I'm happy that my girls are safe. I am safe. I was able to leave the relationship. But a little bit after, this person purchased a gun. And he's always wanted a gun, but I've always convinced him not to get a gun because, one, I didn't feel safe having a gun in the house, especially knowing this person's character. And when I found out that he bought a gun, I'd already filed for divorce, and I made sure that I sent an email to my family, and I copied my divorce attorney, including this individual, my ex-husband, and said, if anything happens to me or if I disappear, I guarantee you 1,000%. It's this person. Make sure to report him immediately. It's him. So I share this as a woman to another woman. I also have daughters, and I don't wish this on my daughters. It doesn't matter if you think you are with the nicest guy. You still need to think about your safety. You never know a person's character up until they're no longer getting their way. They can no longer control you. There are too many women out there suffering in silence, as well as women who end up in the news missing or unalived because of these types of relationships. So please educate yourself, stay safe, and please listen to this content creator and watch the entire video. Oh, one final thing. If your spouse is accusing you of infidelity, it's because they're the one doing it.
Couldn't agree with that more. When I told my abuser that I was leaving him, I was like, I'm leaving, and he was like, no, you're not, and he was freaking out, and I just like ignored him and went to put my shoes on. And anyways, he attacked me, and I never got my second shoe on, and I tried to just go for the door, but I didn't make it to the door handle. And anyways, his plea hearing is in a few days, and I remember I was watching a podcast on abuse, and they were looking at cases of family annihilators, and they found that a majority of the cases that they were looking at, there wasn't like a huge amount of evidence that these men had been physically abusive. There wasn't like reports of domestic violence in these cases. So you might think like, oh, he would never, blah, blah, blah. But if that dude depends on you for stuff, if that guy counts on you to like do stuff for him and whatever, like, you have no idea how he's going to react. And if I ever decided to date again, I would definitely do all my breakups over text.
After my last dating experience, I will never again end things with a man in person.
Thank you. It's Kayla Simone for sharing this really important information. I remember ending a long-term relationship with an abusive partner, and I didn't say anything. I told him I needed to take some time, and then I slowly, when he was at work, I moved out of the house bit by bit until he finally noticed, but by then I was already gone. So there's this debate going around, man or bear? This is why we choose the bear. This is why. We talk about that on my podcast, My Sister's a Therapist podcast. My sister, Virginia Jones, is a stand-up comedian, and she's my co-host. And I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And we talk about man or bear, because who's more likely to take us out? It's the man. Spoiler alert. So,
Thought the same exact thing.
Please go watch the rest of that video. I've tagged it below. Ladies, stop this business of breaking up with people in person. He goes on to say you'd rather be the jerk that breaks up with someone over the phone. I would add to that and say the day you decide to break up with the person, if they know where you live, go somewhere else. Leave town. Go visit your sister, your brother, your parents, your friend, and break up with the person. And don't be home for a while until you know you're actually safe. The person you date and the person you break up with are two different people. You don't know if the person you break up with will hurt you. I've said this before, a lot of men can't be told no. So if you break up with them, you're essentially telling them no. You're rejecting them, and they will harm you. They will harm you, and they won't even care about going to jail. They will harm you. Now you've lost your life. What is that gonna help? I love him. I care about him. I want to give him the respect he deserves. Next thing, you're in a coffin. He doesn't care to give you the respect. You need to put your peace and safety first. Don't break up with people in person, alone, in private. Don't do it. Don't do it. You don't know people. You never fully know someone. You never fully know what they will do when they're angry. Just because you've been dating, married for years, you just never know. This is a human being who's significantly stronger than you. Why are you testing that? Why are you testing them? The name is Shido. I'm your personal emotional intelligence detective. Voice can be real. For more talk, you won't regret it.
To people, because things like this happen all the time, and I have plenty of stories to share with from women all over the world, that things like this have actually happened to, and it's very sad to say. Can you imagine that the one time this person that you used to lay next to, close your two eyes, go to sleep, and now you have to be worried that this person could possibly harm you when trying to break up with them? And people might call me petty or childish all they want, but I never break up with someone in person. I just never do it, because I've always had this feeling where I just feel like I have to do it either over the phone or, and even if I have the idea that it's going to happen and it's already planned in my head, because women don't just break up. Things have already happened way before that, and then the breakup happened when you just cannot resolve the situation, right? We don't just wake up one day and say, hey, we no longer want to be with you anymore. At least not me, right? But my thing is, I'm always very strategic about anything in my life, honestly. But when it comes to stuff like that, because you never know what the next person is thinking, you never know how angry they could be, especially when you decide to end the relationship, right? So I usually just, if I'm with you, we hang out, we do whatever needs to be done, and then I'll say my bye au revoir, okay, see you later, blah 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 blah. And then after a while, I'll just tell you, hey, this is not working out, or whatever it needs to be, whatever needs I need to do to get out of that relationship. But I always think that it is smart as a woman to do it in person, if you do it in person, in public, or over the phone. And of course, you gotta watch out for yourself, because you just never know nowadays. And even girl and girls too. So it's not just women and men. It can be anybody. So you just have to be very, very careful when it comes to, the relationship and breaking up in person, because you just never know, because a lot of stuff happen in that process. A lot of dangerous things happen to women in the process of breaking up with their loved one, with the person that they used to be in love with, or that person used to be in love with them, or vice versa, or same thing, you know, both of them being in love with each other. Things like this happen all the time. And as someone who is a true crime fan, I know that those things, you know, happen all the time, and it's not, you know, it's nothing that you've done, but it's just that the person, that just what the person, how the person is. And I don't want to live to, you know, give examples. I'm not gonna do that. So I will try to prevent that as much as I can, because you just never know how people are, what people are thinking, how they are. So you always have to be very careful. If you have to send that text message, be petty. If you have to send a text message, meet in person, but in public, meet with a friend, a cousin, your sister, somebody have to be there. Do that. If you don't feel like the situation is right for you to break up, you know, in private with that person, just a one-on-one, get however many people behind you as possible. And if you're going to that person's house, let people know, because you know, you just never know what could happen. I remember one time I was seeing this guy when we were really seeing each other, right? And I was around his house, and he just started acting weird. To me, he was giving weird vibes, and he did a lot of stuff that to me came off like red flags. And afterwards, I just, you know, I made up a lie and told him that I had to go to this work meeting, because obviously I'm letting him know that other people are expecting me. So I wanted to leave his house. And as soon as I left his house, honey, let me just tell you, I blocked this man so quick. I was like, oh no. Oh no, because you know what? You have to follow your gut sometimes. You know how you feel about something or someone or a situation. So never doubt your guts, because you just never know. And he was giving the killer to me, and I was like, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm going to leave. And then, of course, afterwards, I did unblock him, because he just kept messaging me on WhatsApp, which I should have just kept him blocked, because what the heck. But yeah, and from there on, I always get that weird feeling with this man. So I never even met up with him again, because I always had that weird feeling with him. And I'm just like, ugh, it creeps me out. So yeah, I didn't say at while I was at his house that I was going to, you know, never talk to him again. I give him a goodbye kiss and everything, a hug, all of that. Went through with everything, and then I just blocked him on my way home. I was like, oh hell no. I'm not about to be found, you know, how things happen, you know. But anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's kind of long, but I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye.